Thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, organizers. I heard that yesterday was a great start. It was a great day. I've come here to talk about a phenomenon that is happening in Oculus and with what we are doing, and it is called crowd rifting. You might ask if I'm not going to talk about our technical the technical aspects of the Rift, but I think that in a conference about digital contents, we don't necessarily have to talk about the type of screens that we're using or what we're trying to use in technical terms, but I would rather concentrate on the community question, which surrounds Oculus. And in this case, a community is created of people like you, of people from universities, people who have been doing projects for many years. And one of the reasons for which Oculus has had a lot of success is thanks to its community. The idea of crowdfunding or collective financing is that when you try to begin a project and you get a boost thanks to the community or thanks to the fans. You probably have heard talk of this term, crowdfunding, and this new term, crowd lifting, has an emotional component to it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our history. I've studied engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then I studied cinematography, and here I have some of the companies with which I have worked, and I was going to work for 6 months and then I ended up being there for 15 years. And I've also been quite a long time working in studies in Southern California, and that I love. I love to work also in schools because I think that you learn a lot from children. People may already know Oculus, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the company nevertheless. Paolo Lacchi was the founder, and he created this company, and he realized that with mobile phones, for example, who has had a broken mobile screen? Well, that's happened to me a couple of times. It falls from your hands, for example, when you get out of the car. Well, Alma bought these this broken mobiles with the broken screens, and with three of them perhaps I had enough to make a new screen, and then I sold it via email. And what I wanted to do really was to get a device, a virtual reality device, which would be the definitive item, and he managed it, and the company launched after Palmer found other co-founders. They launched his company with Kickstarter. He was convinced that that was the way of creating the community, and he began to sell kits, $200, $300, and then you could add the screen, lenses, plastic, and with all of these different components and parts, he wanted to make a kit, a virtual reality kit, but he wanted to do a product with which people could really pick up and use, and that was very easy to use. And with Kickstarter, he was very successful because he managed to get $2.5 million, 2 million euros, and 100 people approximately buy these devices. In 2013, we had DK1, or the development kit 1, and we call it 1 now because we launched a second one later. And the important part is that people began to talk about the potential. I'm going to talk about Oculus and my students, because they came up to me and they said to me, can we begin a project with Oculus Rift? Of course. And that was the first contact that I really had in 2014, this year. As I said before, we were bought by Facebook for $2 billion, and that was incredible for such a small startup like ours from California. And we launched our second development kit, and that sold 80,000 units. And this has been the virtual reality device, the best ever device of this sort. And in September, we associated with Samsung for the mobile version, and we're working on that. And this is something that is foreseen that will begin to take shape at the end of the year. It will be launched at the end of the year, but what we are not going to talk about in this talk is the date of the delivery and the technical specifications or the price, but we are going to talk about the beginnings of our community, and this is the picture, and I hope that you can all see it. This is a device that is covered with tape, and that is what we use to seal pipes. And this is the prototype of our Rift, of our model. And then afterwards we have a kind of a tape at the back, and that's like for skiing glasses, the same kind of a strap, and it's got a sticking tape that holds it at the back. And the reaction of this, before seeing it, was that virtual reality in the 1990s did not work. So why didn't it work? That was the reaction. But now technological companies have caught up, and the price of components like screens and displays have gone down an awful lot. And if you combine that with the incredible programs that exist nowadays that can capture images and modify them through lenses, and in this way you can see this combination correctly at a basic level. We have hardware, software, and contents, and everything has to be used. And this was the concept that Palmer had and that he discovered, and from which he started to work. And so we had 9,500 people or fans who were backing us, and there were people who said, I'm going to give you at least $10 because I think that what you want to develop is a great idea. And here you can see that we weren't connected to Facebook at the time of Kickstarter, and that is curious because the company ended up being bought by Facebook, but at that time we weren't in Facebook, so I hope that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't see this. So why did we choose Kickstarter? Partly out of emotion. We had that passion, that emotion. If you don't share that emotion for what you do, we could be just a group of people working in a laboratory using their prototypes, and nobody would use them. So how do you get the message to get out? There are things that we can do, like, for example, to do advertisements in Facebook, or we can meet the developers individually, or ask the Time magazine to appear on their cover. But Kickstarter had a community of people that were like us and who shared this emotion. And also it was something that broke the established norms. It was something that hadn't yet been done ever, and Kickstarter offered that possibility. It offers opportunities for creative projects, and this combination, even for Kickstarter, which is quite curious, well, there are things which, of course, end up being successful and some things that don't. And so we ended up receiving some money, and that is important, of course, because otherwise you cannot set up a company. But that was not the only benefit. And here, this is when I thought of the term crowd lifting. and this is not only applied to the Rift, but also to many activities. A company that works with crowd lifting means that part of the value of the company, at least, is in the community itself. In this way, you can see whether the value is in the audience, in our audience. And we showed our device to the community, and we also went to listen to others, and in the end we understood the power of the community. I do not consider that this is simply becoming viral. It's something more than that, because at the beginning on YouTube there was a person who went all over the place, Matt. He danced, and he went anywhere around the world and started to dance, and there are videos of this man everywhere, all over the place. And I was lucky enough to be able to hire him, and he ended up being the designer of one of our first games, and his videos became viral. I recommend you to see them if you have time. But this was not designed so that there should be direct interaction, but it did get a boost because really it reached people's hearts somehow. But what Matt learned, and this is the second point that I would like to point out, is that the video was much more interesting when other people got together with Matt and they all began to dance together. And so through the social networks, he said, well, I'm going to go to Madrid, and then the people went to Madrid and they got together with him and they began to dance for 5 minutes, and that's how he did the following videos. And that is the difference that for us is important. It is not just simply a viral factor, because many people would talk about that for 5 minutes and then they would let it go. And this happens to us with demos. We don't want to have the effect that the circus would provoke. Simply, you see a woman with two heads at the circus, and you say, "Good heavens, she's got two heads. Does she really have two heads, or is it a trick, or is it reality?" And then you leave the circus and you arrive home, and you probably forget that woman with two heads. You'll forget about her. So it was very emotional, very exciting at the circus, and then it stopped being so. But that is not what we want to do. We want to leave a mark, a lasting mark, an impression that is lasting, and so we need a communication towards the outside. We want to explain what new things we have to people, and here we have Palmer on a video. And for a company that works with crowd lifting, one of the essential questions is communication. To communicate information, useful information, new functions in the software kit. Fred emailed us this demo, and really we are quite delighted with it. And the question is to keep in contact continuously. Part of the success of Kickstarter is that the projects that are funded, that I have seen with various students who have gone through there, is that once that the communication is updated in a continuous way, you get more success than if it is not done. And secondly, you have to listen, you have to understand when we receive comments. These can be some things that we already know, and it simply reinforces what you already know, and other times it can be some things that we don't know about, and you have to be sincere, and you have to acknowledge that you didn't know it, and that you can include that in the design or in the development or whatever. And you have to acknowledge that person, and that is done thanks to listening. Just a series of people start to talk, not the entire community. You're not going to have thousands of people within the community that are giving you feedback every day, but there are a series of people that do represent the group as a whole. And when you're listening to one of those people, you're listening to a representation of all of them. And so it is important to respond to these questions, queries, comments. and give it the importance that it deserves. Number 3 is to be open. We have to be a company that is open, and that is a modern company, and more modern, the more open the projects are. As I said, I'm not going to talk about the launch date of Rift because we don't know it yet. We're still perfecting the device. But there are questions that the company cannot make public until a certain moment in time. But I am talking about availability for the community. We have launched a couple of demos of the Rift. This has been done globally, and we've allowed people to try to test the device, even though it is still a demo. Even if it is only a prototype with masking tape. And we have developers, and it's been rather unusual within this games industry, within this games sector. You have to have agreements, big agreements, and you have to sign a lot of documents. Otherwise, these devices are very expensive. And what we think is that if somebody wanted to work with virtual reality, they shouldn't be tied down in that way. How are we going to know who are the people, the students, who are the best defenders of virtual reality? We didn't know it. We thought that there were some good practices. And also there were simulations, but we've always been open to this. And also a good proportion of our open source is open, so people can modify it, they can make their contributions if they want. And this year with Oculus Connect, and this is a conference that we hold in Hollywood, we took the design of the first development kit and we made it public. We opened it out. Why? Well, if it's our technology, why are you going to do that? Well, because we believe that we are stronger if everyone has access to this information. Of course, it is free. It's free of charge. We don't charge an annual fee in order to be able to use it, to use this software. That's what we're talking about. And here we have DK2, the development kit 2. And really, we did a DK repository. We made it public in a talk. So all of these technical specifications were made public in one of our talks on YouTube. You can find it. The next point is to be honest, to be sincere, to be frank, because if we're not, the community knows about it and they will tell you, and they'll say, watch out, careful, error. I'm going to give you an example. When we were with Kickstarter in 2012, we were very optimistic and we thought that we could send the units in December of 2012, and to do hardware is a very difficult thing, and to make it in China is even more difficult. So we made a mistake with that date, therefore, and one of the reasons for which they hired me is that I have quite a lot of know-how about manufacturing. When I was in Skylanders, I had all that experience. And since as I was saying, we made a mistake with the delivery date, and we made people wait 3 weeks or 3 months. We were going to be late 3 weeks, and some people got angry, and a lot of people were disappointed. And I said, this is with Reddit, and in this Reddit forum there were people who were very disappointed and angry, but there were people who said, well, I prefer to wait and receive a product that is fully finished and that is good, and that was very valuable for us. And so we said, give us until March and we'll send the units. And mid-February we said to ourselves, oh dear, I think we won't be ready for March, but we did manage it, and so we sent 300 units in the month of March. And most of the units then arrived in April. And we also warned that if they were really angry, that we would give them a voucher. They would get a refund in a voucher, and some people said, well, we would refund it cash. And the second effect was that Kickstarter, we said that we were going to provide a software kit that could be downloaded, and this software, we weren't able to give it, weren't able to provide it, and so the Kickstarter rules are that fine. Well, a donation really is what is being done. A donation is being made. If it is not bought through Kickstarter in the United States, we have these TV programs for $10. You have Pavarotti CD, and for $15 you have the DVD and the CD, and for more, well, Pavarotti can come and sing in your living room. Well, so what did we do? Well, we began to talk with the community, and we said, well, sorry, well, we're not ready, but we're going to give you some options. We could give you a refund, we said, without having to give a reason, or a voucher, or a software of virtual reality, or a credit for a future purchase within the Oculus shop. And there were some people who asked for a refund. Others said, well, thank you for informing us. I'm going to download the software. I'm going to take the credit. And the community, generally speaking, had quite a positive attitude. And my team had to study how we were going to do all of this for the accounts. And there were also people who first of all asked us for a refund and then decided to change their minds, and that they would wait for the future to get another product. And crowd lifting, what is essential with crowd lifting is that if we're talking about a project, and quality really is the fundamental matter in crowd lifting, from the developers to the users and ourselves. It is something that has to be good. The quality has to be very good. If we send out something that does not work, then simply you spoil, or you spoil the trust that the community has given you, and they would be right, because you're not doing a good job, and they would think that you're not doing a good job, and they would be right. And to be continuously communicating with them, to be sincere, is also a question of quality, and offering that quality is a key thing. We have two platforms. We have a platform for a PC, for a desktop, and also for a mobile unit. And we say this quite sincerely. The mobile version is for Note 4, and this is a very powerful mobile. And on the other hand, we have the PC box, but it is very accessible. And people usually feel more comfortable with the mobile than with the computer. It's easier to use, but it doesn't always generate that feeling of presence that a computer can generate. There's less presence. It's obviously less powerful than a desktop. And we always explain this. We explain the pros and the cons of each one of the platforms. The PC version really shows all the strength, all the potential that our products can have. And so we are always sincere about what you can get with virtual reality. In each platform in our company, 65% are engineers among our staff, and something strange happens when we do this, when we communicate, when we listen. We become part of the community, and we have a feeling that the members are inside and outside the staff. And when everyone thinks that everyone is like you, then you treat them better because it is part of the family, because it is like yourself. They're part of yourself. And this is a much more global vision than of what happens in the world, and what we are trying to do, because normally we don't have all the answers, and particularly in the technological world. And also we lose this distinction between them and us, because we stop thinking that we are right and that we know things and they don't know things and they're not right, and so with them and us we begin to be a large us, and this is a very powerful tool for virtual reality community, and not just through Oculus. It goes further. I've got students who've graduated and they began companies, but virtual reality companies, and we have engineers who've joined other companies who interact with the community and listen to the community, who go out, who commit, who go to talk at conferences like this, or who go to workshops, who go to camps, seminars, and also learn. They improve the product, they improve the ecosystem. What is ideal is that if we do this correctly, the Rift hardware ends up being forgotten, and then we just concentrate on the virtual reality space. And here we have all of these people doing different things. We have an experiment here, for example, of dental work, and if we're using this device, it's giving us this feeling. It's being tested out on many others, with many others, and if we have to see our dentist, this can really work. And another example of how it works, how our product works in a trade fair, a consumption, a marketing trade fair. We showed our devices and we had some demos, but people wanted a final device for virtual reality, and the community members said that they didn't agree that there should be just demos, because what I want is for the unit to be sent to me. I want to receive the device. But the people that continued with that post and with that comment, they defended Oculus. And that was the first post, and I thought, well, good grief, what can I answer? I'm disappointed because I'm not able to give the community what the community wants. But the community really was quite in consonance with what we thought. You can't make this happen. We can't go out and do this and make this happen in a miraculous way. You have to do all of these activities. And if we have products and people who feel passionate about it, then we will achieve the results. And I think that both things are important. I think that we have to read the early feedback and also the response, which was to defend Oculus, saying that they wanted to wait in order to get a good product. And here we have a prototype that has some white dots, which is the crescent bay. It won't appear in the end product, but it will allow you to monitor it, these white dots that appear. And talking about the future, I think that virtual reality can only work focused on the community. Obviously, we don't all have all the answers, and really we love to listen to what kind of investments are needed for virtual reality, how university schools are doing courses in order to inform people about virtual reality. We're delighted that people join us, and there are about 20 people who've joined the Oculus staff these last 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks, more or less, every fortnight, we do a welcome meeting. That was on Tuesday. It was here at night time, but I didn't want to miss it. And we listened to many different comments. These are people who have very different backgrounds, studies, they have different histories, and they liked virtual reality for 20 years, and they wanted to make that contribution to this field. We also have developers who are doing things, really amazing things in the community, and of course the users, and that is the largest proportion of the community. And so all this combination can only work when they all work together and cooperate, and we want to achieve the target of 1 billion users in virtual reality, but we think that it can work, we can achieve that goal because we have this community and with this approach that we have, because we're beginning in the world of entertainment, and just like with the example of a dentist, this can be applied to many other varied projects, and for example, Facebook is creating a second campus in San Francisco where I work, and this is a huge building that Frank Gehry has designed, and the team of architects has used Rift in order to be able to see these virtual reality designs, and people could see the project through Facebook, and they could have a great experience before the building is built. And these are the ways that we can reach people, because there are social activities that we are always participating in. We try to be present. We like to experiment. These are real realities, but also fictitious realities, because why not play golf on the moon? Well, perhaps we can. You can, perhaps, with virtual reality, or perhaps we can see a friend who we haven't seen for 5 years because we live in different towns or cities. And so that is the crowd lifting model that we have followed and that we have found, and that fortunately we have found it, and I hope that these lessons will be useful for you and help you in your projects. If you have virtual reality projects, I would be delighted to hear about them and to talk with the community, listen to the community and belong to the community. I think that will be the key to success. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. No sé quién se atreve a hacerle una pregunta. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning, and thank you very much. It's been very stimulating to listen to your ideas about crowdlifting. My question has to do with the following. You're trying to be sincere, to listen to the community, but it would be quite positive for those 8,000 people who have acquired the first kit to be able to obtain something from your contribution, from the contribution also, which can arise from the acquisition from Facebook, because they've just, the only thing they can get is the kit and nothing else. Yes, you understand. We're also talking about compensation. The Kickstarter function structure is as follows. This is how it works. In this way, you do a contribution, you make, and you hope to get some kind of compensation as a result. In fact, they give it to you, and we follow the established procedures in Kickstarter, but it is a little bit unfair. If you had to do it again, probably you would try a different kind of method, like, for example, intelligent smart contracts, or something would be fairer for the community. At the time that we launched those devices that we've been talking about, well, this that you're talking about didn't exist. It's something that has taken place in the last couple of years, and I was not involved really when Oculus was in Kickstarter. They hired me later when they needed somebody else who had a few more grey hairs. Are you happy with that answer? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. Another question, please. Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for your talk. The enthusiasm that you're showing for the community and this initiative, and after this experience, perhaps could you consider a kind of initiative which would not be appropriate for this kind of community approach? So, something where you might have thought, well, I wouldn't like to use this kind of community approach? Well, for example, health services. And perhaps medical research probably would not be very appropriate for this kind of community approach, but from the perspective of a company that would be similar to ours, I think there's always some kind of element that you can contribute, because you have to know what your audience is, and I used to work in Activision where there was a lot of trajectory in consumption products, and when I was working in marketing, I learned a lot about basics. You went out and you talked with the community, you did the research, that you tried to find out what they wanted and tried to find products that were linked to what they wanted, but there was a minimum exchange. It wasn't such an open approach. And even in a service business, which could be an example, if really you don't know your audience well, if you don't know them fully, then I don't know if it will work or not. I'm sure that it wouldn't be the same in any case, but I'm surely what I would be saying should also include the fact that with a project such as Oculus, obviously will be boosted, and we want it to be to work really, and that is how crowd lifting works, because it is not a product that is more isolated, more local. Perhaps for a product of these characteristics, this kind of approach wouldn't be so valuable. But I think we always have to be very sincere and very open with our communication. Otherwise, if you don't have this approach, then the company may not work so well. Are there any other questions? Well, I think that the experience of Oculus is a little bit my shirt. It's something that strikes you and that protects you. Well, I hadn't seen your shirt. I have to buy one before I leave. Well, I have a fast question now. Do you think that in a couple of years we could all be at home with an Oculus Rift, and that we could have one in our home, all of us in our home? Well, I hope that we will be able to have that, but it's like any other technology. It has its value and its moment in time, and there are moments when probably it's not appropriate, but undoubtedly I think it is a device for use at home. I don't think that you have to go to a specific place to use it. Either the mobile or the PC version can be used at home. For communicating, as I said, with other people, I think it is one of the strengths that the virtual reality has, that you can play a game, you can see a movie, you can communicate with friends. And when you want to have that moment of presence, then you can use it, you can monitor it. And then when you move your head, for example, with the PC version, you can move your head in this direction. You can do all these kinds of body movements. And when you know somebody, then you know exactly the way they have of nodding their head, and you want to have a virtual reality avatar, then you recognize that person. That's Jose, somebody who moves in that way. That's a very real moment. I think that is something that I think without doubt will take root in homes. And what about the updates? Do you think they're going to advance quickly enough? Yes, undoubtedly the technology is more and more advancing more quickly. We've seen the example of Keynet, and there's a digital market through which you can have access to all the content. And I think the technology undoubtedly will be progressing very quickly. It is incredible to see television with Oculus. Facebook cubre una necesidad básica humana. ¿Dónde estás? Me asusté un poquito. Bueno, yo estaba diciendo que Facebook cubre una necesidad básica humana, que es la necesidad de compartir. Oculus ayuda a crear unas realidades virtuales, en principio para 1.000 millones de usuarios, como dijo usted, en el mundo, con varios millones que están ya conectados a la realidad virtual. El reto es cómo podemos compartir estas realidades entre usuarios, cómo se va a hacer y cuándo va a ocurrir. Did you understand the question? No, well, partly, I think. But he's talking about the community and Facebook and how people share their privacy on Facebook and how they share their life. Por favor, corrígeme la pregunta si no he acertado. Well, he's talking about how they're going to share their experiences in the community, the experiences that they have with Oculus. Although we are part of Facebook, we're not going to require that somebody should be in Facebook in order to be part of this virtual reality. If somebody wants to use their Facebook credentials in order to get connected and get all that potential, well, that's fine, but it is not a necessity or requirement. For example, if you go on holiday and you record a video, you want people to see it, perhaps through Facebook, or perhaps there's a member of the family who cannot go to your son's birthday party. Well, somebody can be there with a 360 camera, and somebody can be remotely connected, seeing it through virtual reality. And I think that therefore that there will be a huge component that has to do with the success of virtual reality, that has to do with this connection. Have I more or less answered your question? Yes, okay, fine. Tenemos una pregunta por ahí. Hello, good morning. Now, in line, not with the last question, but with the previous question, I want to ask the following. Compared, for example, with 3D technology, which has been around for many years now, and which was very successful, then it failed, and then it became important again, and there are many large companies like LG and Samsung that are building 3D screens, 3D TVs, but really the market isn't receiving this well. People don't really want to have 3D devices or glasses to see the TV. How do you think that Oculus Rift will be able to reduce that gap that is existing in the market? That is a very good question. It is a question that is very important also. Well, the core of that question has to do with user behavior. I want to put on something. Do I want to put something that is as big as what I've shown you, and so clumsy? Well, probably for specific experiences, yes. But for daily things, we probably would want to wear something that is a bit smaller. And as the versions evolve, we have to do devices that are smaller and smaller and lighter. This is something that I tell all the engineers. You have to remember that the amount of acceptable time before the device becomes fun, comfortable, or useful has to be zero. From zero, when you take it out of the box, you have to be able to put it on, and it has to work. All of these things work, and this means that virtual reality will become something that people want to use day after day. There are other technologies like 3D televisions, in spite of the fact that they're huge and they provide an experience like a movie at home. In the end, you are limited by a context. There are physical limitations, and when you are within virtual reality, you can look up and you can feel that it is a huge room like this, like this auditorium is huge. It's very high, the ceiling. And this sensation, you wouldn't have it in a 3D TV. If somebody's watching us online, hello, if you're watching us on streaming, it doesn't seem so big, and possibly I look quite small on your screens. But if you were in virtual reality, you could look up and you could feel the hugeness of the room, and that is what sets the difference. That's why this technology will have a much more long-lasting potential and more successful, and because it gives very, very different experiences. It takes you to a different place, and if we don't manage to achieve that, if we don't offer that to our spectators, then we run risk of becoming something that in the end will be left in a drawer and forgotten. Now, to comment on what you said, if I'm in the living room in my home with my family, all of us should have the Oculus Rift device in order to be able to enjoy the experience. How would we create an interactive experience together? For example, Nintendo Y has done it, or video console games, or Guitar Hero, for example, designed for Y consoles. Somebody wrote a book on the strength of Y, and they used Guitar Hero as an example. What they said is that what made Guitar Hero to be unique at that time was that the majority of the games has like 3 areas, and try to follow my explanation. We have the games area, which is what is happening in the digital world, then we have the screen area or space, which is what you see, and then you have the player space, and that is where you have your command, the control. What happened with Skylanders also is the game, the player's space. It got more important. What you did with the guitar, how you did it, all those things gave you a greater sense of connectivity. What Drift does is that it brings all of these spaces together and it converts them into one. It managed to get the space of the player and the screen disappear, really, and that all of these spaces become one single one. So I wouldn't suggest that people that are playing chess should go into a room and put on Rift and play chess, although perhaps they do that, but that is not the suggestion that I have. But let's say that the family wants to go to a volcano when it's erupting. We could feel it on television, be very close, but it would be even more powerful if perhaps you are among the buildings and you really see what is happening. And obviously it depends on the ages of the people involved, because you want the information to be appropriate and be as faithful as possible, or perhaps not. But what you will want is to see the others also within this experience. Perhaps you want to wear traditional clothes when you see the eruption of the volcano. This is the experience that people will have as they use it in the way that you suggested. Last question now. Hello. You said before that you are trying to bring in virtual reality in universities and training colleges. I like that a lot. I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that. Well, we don't have an organized approach, really. All of this is coming into schools because the pupils and students are asking for it, but there are a lot of hackathons and there are weekends that are organized for many students to come together and create projects. We send the design engineers to those events in order to train them. In my university, in the USC University, we have a pitching, and people have to get approval for their projects. And naturally, there are people who have virtual reality projects. And in the end, we end up having kits with which to work and people with which we will work. And this is happening naturally. This is very ad hoc and customized, and this is happening as it arises. I've heard also that some lecturers in other universities are also creating courses, 6-month courses for virtual reality, and you learn the basic concept of what you need to know as in computing and as a developer. And I think this is a movement that is going to grow and grow. Well, thank you very much. And the transmedia seminar is going to begin, and the next seminars will be at 12. The publications will be in the Roma room, and at 1:15 there will be a seminar on journalism. Thank you very much, and continue to enjoy FICOD, and it really is fascinating. Thank you very much indeed.